Barely believable. The shocking truth about Aerosucre Flight 157. The roar of engines echoed across the tarmac of German Olano Airport in Puerto Carreño, Colombia. It was December 20th, 2016, and Aerosucre Flight 157, a Boeing 727-200 cargo plane, was preparing for takeoff. The plane's purpose was simple: transport goods to Bogotá. Yet, what transpired that day would shock the aviation world and serve as a poignant moral lesson for all. The aircraft, carrying 5 crew members and a significant cargo load, taxied to the runway. From a distance, a few aviation enthusiasts observed the aging plane. Despite its years of service, the 727 still exuded a rugged charm. However, beneath its exterior lay a series of overlooked issues: a lack of proper maintenance, questionable safety protocols, and a culture of complacency that had grown over time. As the plane began its takeoff roll, the crew quickly realized something was wrong. The runway at Puerto Carreño was notoriously short, barely adequate for a fully loaded 727. The captain, seasoned but overconfident, had dismissed concerns raised during the pre-flight briefing. "Relax," he had said. "We've done this 100 times. We know this plane like the back of our hands, but confidence without vigilance is a dangerous thing." The 727 struggled to gain enough speed, and by the time it reached the end of the runway, it was still not airborne. The aircraft overran the tarmac, smashing through the perimeter fence and narrowly avoiding nearby homes. It finally lifted off, but not without sustaining damage. Witnesses watched in horror as the plane struggled to climb, its engines straining against gravity. Inside the cockpit, the crew battled to stabilize the aircraft. Alarms blared, and panic set in. The captain barked orders, but it was too late. The damaged plane, unable to maintain altitude, crashed into a field a few kilometers from the airport. The crash claimed the lives of all but one crew member. Miraculously, the lone survivor, Carlos, was pulled from the wreckage by local farmers. His survival was as much a testament to luck as it was to the quick actions of the locals. In the aftermath, investigators pieced together the events leading to the tragedy. The findings were damning. The aircraft was overloaded, the runway inadequate, and the airline's safety culture deeply flawed. Maintenance logs revealed a history of ignored warnings and deferred repairs. The captain's overconfidence, combined with the company's cost-cutting measures, had created a perfect storm. It was not just an accident. It was a preventable disaster born of arrogance, complacency, and disregard for human life. Carlos, the lone survivor, became a voice for change. During his recovery, he reflected deeply on the events of that day. "It wasn't just one mistake," he said during an interview. "It was a series of small decisions, each one seemingly harmless, that led to a catastrophe. We were so focused on cutting corners and saving time that we forgot the value of life itself." Carlos's words struck a chord with people worldwide. He chose to share his story, not to assign blame, but to prevent similar tragedies. He toured schools, universities, and aviation conferences, recounting the harrowing tale of Flight 157. Each time, he emphasized the same point: safety should never be compromised for convenience or profit. The story of Aerosucre Flight 157 became more than an aviation tragedy. It became a cautionary tale about the dangers of complacency and misplaced priorities. The airline industry took notice, and stricter regulations were introduced. Airports with inadequate infrastructure were upgraded, and airlines were held to higher maintenance and operational standards. But the lesson extended beyond aviation. People from all walks of life began to see the parallels in their own lives. How often do we overlook warning signs because it's inconvenient to address them? How frequently do we allow pride or overconfidence to cloud our judgment? One story that stood out was that of Mariana, a young entrepreneur who heard Carlos speak at a conference. She had been cutting corners in her own business, prioritizing profits over quality. Inspired by Carlos's message, she decided to make changes. Though it was costly and time-consuming, her commitment to integrity eventually earned her the trust and loyalty of her customers. Mariana later wrote to Carlos, saying, Your story saved my business and possibly lives. It reminded me that shortcuts may seem appealing, but they often lead to long-term consequences. The moral impact of Flight 157's story rippled across industries. In hospitals, medical staff were reminded to double-check procedures, even during emergencies. In schools, educators emphasized the importance of preparation and diligence. Families reflected on the value of communication and accountability in their relationships. For Carlos, this transformation was the silver lining in a cloud of tragedy. Though he bore the physical and emotional scars of the crash, he found purpose in sharing its lessons. "We must never forget," he often said. "Every decision, no matter how small, has consequences. And when we choose safety, integrity, and vigilance, we choose life." The shocking truth about Aerosucre Flight 157 wasn't just about an aviation mishap. It was a wake-up call for humanity. It highlighted the fragility of life and the importance of responsibility in every aspect of our existence. It reminded the world that behind every system, policy, or procedure are people whose lives depend on the choices we make. In the end, the story of Flight 157 is not just about loss, but also redemption. It is a tale of how tragedy can lead to transformation and how even the most devastating events can serve as catalysts for change. It teaches us that while mistakes are inevitable, the lessons we learn from them can guide us toward a better, safer, and more conscientious future. Carlos often concluded his talks with a simple but powerful message: don't wait for a disaster to remind you of what's truly important. Act now. Choose safety. Choose life. This story stands as a testament to the enduring power of lessons learned through adversity, a moral story that continues to inspire change and vigilance worldwide.